For nearly 3 months, the colony world of Varix Prime had endured a siege that every military analyst in known space agreed was impossible to survive. The planet sat on the edge of civilized territory, a prosperous frontier settlement built around rare crystal deposits that powered advanced starship systems. For decades, Varix Prime had thrived. Trade vessels arrived daily. Families established new lives beneath its pale blue skies. Industries expanded. Entire cities rose from what had once been an empty wilderness. Then the Carthan Dominion arrived. Their fleet emerged without warning from deep space, overwhelming border defenses in less than 6 hours. Orbital stations were destroyed. Patrol squadrons vanished. Communication relays were shattered before distress signals could spread beyond neighboring sectors. The colony found itself trapped beneath hundreds of enemy warships. At first, many believed relief forces would come quickly. Varix Prime was too valuable to abandon. Surely nearby governments understood what was at stake. They were wrong. The first week passed, then the second, then the first month. No reinforcements appeared. Every request for aid met the same answer. Regional fleets were stretched thin. Defensive commitments elsewhere took priority. Strategic planners considered Varix Prime already lost. One by one, neighboring systems stopped responding altogether. The colony had become a sacrifice. Inside the planetary command center, exhaustion had become a permanent condition. Officers worked endless shifts beneath dim emergency lighting. Tactical displays showed shrinking defensive zones across every continent. Each day, another outpost fell. Each day, another city reported shortages. Fuel reserves dropped to critical levels. Medical supplies dwindled. Food rationing became mandatory across the entire planet. The enemy understood exactly what they were doing. They rarely launched major assaults anymore. They didn't need to. Their blockade ensured the colony would slowly collapse under its own desperation. Fear spread faster than any invasion force. Families crowded emergency shelters. Businesses closed. Schools transformed into refugee centers. Entire districts went dark as power grids failed. Yet despite everything, the defenders continued fighting. Commander Thalek stood at the center of that resistance. The gray-skinned veteran had served in military campaigns for nearly 40 years, but nothing in his career compared to the nightmare unfolding around him. Every strategic option had been exhausted. Every reserve had already been committed. Still, surrender remained impossible. The Carthan Dominion offered no mercy. Every intercepted transmission confirmed the same horrifying truth. If the planet fell, its population would either be enslaved or exterminated. There would be no negotiations, no compromise, no second chance. Late one evening, Thalek reviewed casualty reports that seemed endless. Entire defense regiments had ceased to exist. Fighter squadrons launched with pilots barely old enough to serve. Maintenance crews cannibalized damaged equipment simply to keep a handful of weapons operational. The numbers no longer mattered. Mathematics had already declared the colony dead. Yet millions still depended on him. When the emergency council gathered the following day, silence dominated the chamber. Nobody argued. Nobody proposed new strategies. There were none left. At last, Thalek rose from his seat. His voice carried through every military channel and public broadcast network still functioning across the planet. He spoke honestly. He told citizens that the situation was grave. He admitted that rescue might never arrive. He acknowledged the sacrifices already made. Then he reminded them why they continued resisting. Not because victory was likely, not because survival was guaranteed, but because their homes, families, and future generations deserved defenders willing to stand until the final moment. Across Varix Prime, people listened. Factory workers, soldiers, doctors, parents, children. For the first time in weeks, many felt something stronger than fear. Determination. The speech ended with a simple order. Continue holding the line. Hours later, planetary communications transmitted another distress signal into the void. It was the 87th attempt. Nobody expected a response. Long-range transmitters were damaged. Enemy interference covered most frequencies. Previous messages had disappeared into silence. Even so, the signal was sent. Again. And again. And again. As darkness settled across the hemisphere housing the command center, sensor operators monitored the endless sea of stars beyond the blockade. Everything appeared unchanged. Enemy fleets maintained formation. Trade routes remained empty. No friendly ships approached. No miracles arrived. Then a junior technician noticed something unusual. A faint distortion appeared at the extreme edge of sensor range. Small. Almost invisible. At first, everyone assumed it was a malfunction caused by damaged equipment. Yet the anomaly remained. And with every passing minute, it grew stronger. Something was moving through the void. Something enormous. And it was heading directly toward Verex Prime. The anomaly reached a size that could no longer be dismissed as a sensor error. Within hours, every monitoring station on Verex Prime was focused on the mysterious contact. Engineers recalibrated damaged arrays. Scientists reviewed incoming data repeatedly, searching for an explanation that fit known physics. None existed. The object wasn't traveling through conventional hyperspace lanes. It wasn't using any recognized propulsion system. Instead, space itself appeared distorted around it, as if reality were being pulled and stretched by its approach. Commander Thalek studied the reports with growing concern. The contact was crossing impossible distances at a speed that defied accepted limitations. Every updated calculation produced the same conclusion. Whatever was coming would reach the system far sooner than it should. The Carthan Dominion noticed it as well. Across the blockade, enemy vessels adjusted formations. Long-range scanners turned toward the incoming disturbance. Intelligence divisions began searching databases for matching signatures. They found nothing. That uncertainty spread through their command structure faster than anyone expected. The Dominion had conquered dozens of worlds. Their technology ranked among the most advanced in known space. They were accustomed to understanding threats before eliminating them. This time, understanding remained out of reach. As the object continued advancing, strange gravitational fluctuations appeared throughout the outer system. Navigation systems experienced brief failures. Automated probes transmitted corrupted readings before shutting down entirely. The phenomenon seemed connected to the approaching vessel, yet nobody could determine how. Deep beneath the capital city, inside an archive rarely accessed anymore, historians received an urgent request from military command. Search everything. Every forgotten conflict. Every classified record. Every unexplained encounter. Anything resembling the anomaly. Hours later, an elderly archivist named Selvin discovered something unusual. The files were ancient. Many had been sealed for generations. Most originated from civilizations that no longer existed. At first glance, the reports seemed inconsistent. Different species. Different regions. Different centuries. Yet one detail appeared repeatedly. A mysterious force arriving from deep space during moments of absolute desperation. A force associated with a single name. Humans. Selvin continued reading. Entire fleets saved from extinction. Planetary evacuations conducted against impossible odds. Military interventions that arrived without warning and vanished afterward. The accounts shared another common feature. Witnesses always struggled to explain how human ships crossed such vast distances so quickly. Many believed the stories had become exaggerated over time. Legends often grew larger with each retelling. Yet the similarities were difficult to ignore. When Selvin delivered the records to Commander Thalek, the veteran officer remained skeptical. Humanity was real, of course. Everyone knew that. But humans had largely disappeared from major galactic affairs decades earlier. Their territories existed far beyond the established borders of most civilizations. For younger generations, humans occupied an unusual place in history. Not myths. Not exactly. More like fading stories from another era. Stories about stubborn warriors. Stories about impossible rescues. Stories about fleets that answered distress calls others ignored. Meanwhile, the unknown contact continued closing the distance. The latest scans finally revealed a clearer picture. There was only one vessel. Just one. That discovery immediately calmed many Carthan commanders. One ship represented no threat to hundreds. No matter how advanced its technology appeared, no matter how unusual its arrival method seemed, numbers would decide the outcome. Numbers always did. Confident once more, the Dominion resumed preparations for the colony's final assault. On Varix Prime, reactions were different. A single ship offered little practical hope. Yet hope was precisely what the colony had lacked. Citizens gathered around public information screens. Refugees followed every update. Soldiers preparing defensive positions monitored reports between assignments. For the first time in months, people discussed something other than survival. What was coming? Who was aboard? Why was it heading toward them? Then the answer arrived. A communication signal emerged from the distortion. Weak at first. Fragmented. Barely detectable through enemy interference. Technicians rushed to stabilize the transmission. Static filled command frequencies. Broken audio pulses followed. Then a voice finally emerged.
Calm. Clear.
Unhurried. As if the speaker were unaware that an entire world balanced on the edge of destruction. Only 4 words came through. Distress call received. Approaching. Silence followed. No identification. No explanation. No demands. Nothing else. Every command center across the colony froze. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The message had been sent on a frequency tied directly to Varix Prime's emergency beacon. Someone had heard them. After 87 unanswered transmissions, someone had finally answered. Commander Thalex stared at the silent receiver. For the first time since the siege began, he felt something he had nearly forgotten.
Possibility.
Moments later, long-range scanners completed another update. The object emerged from the distortion field enough for accurate measurements. Sensor operators exchanged stunned looks. Several believed the system had malfunctioned again. Others manually verified the results. The numbers remained unchanged. The vessel approaching Varix Prime wasn't a scout. It wasn't a courier. It wasn't a rescue transport. The incoming ship was a heavily armed warship of unprecedented scale. And according to the ancient records resting on Thalex's desk, there was only one civilization known for arriving exactly like this. Humanity. The moment the identification algorithms confirmed the possibility of human origin, every major command network in the system shifted its attention toward the approaching vessel. Distance continued shrinking rapidly. For the first time, visual sensors began resolving details instead of vague energy distortions. What emerged from the darkness exceeded every expectation. The ship was enormous. Not merely large by military standards, but massive enough to make conventional battleships appear insignificant. Its armored hull stretched across kilometers of reinforced plating. Layer upon layer of metallic structures covered its exterior like overlapping fortress walls built for a war that never truly ended. There was nothing elegant about its design. No decorative architecture. No attempts at intimidation through appearance alone. Every visible feature served a purpose. Weapons, armor, sensors, engines. The vessel looked less like a ship and more like a moving declaration that survival had become humanity's specialty. Across Varix Prime, citizens watched live feeds in stunned silence. Even the Carthan Dominion paused its operations. The warship continued advancing directly toward the blockade, without altering course, without hesitation, without caution, as if hundreds of enemy vessels simply did not matter. Commander Thalex studied the incoming data. Deep scars marked sections of the hull. Entire armor plates had clearly been replaced multiple times throughout the vessel's history. Evidence of previous battles covered nearly every surface. Yet despite those scars, the ship projected strength rather than damage. It had survived whatever created those wounds. That realization unsettled military analysts. Ships capable of surviving catastrophic engagements usually belong to civilizations with vast resources. Ships that survived repeatedly became legends. One question dominated every conversation. Why had only one vessel come? The answer made no sense. The Carthan blockade consisted of more than 300 combat ships supported by carriers, missile platforms, electronic warfare vessels, and heavy cruisers. No rational commander would challenge such odds alone. As the human warship crossed into communication range, Dominion leadership immediately opened a channel. The transmission carried the confidence of a force accustomed to victory. This system is under Carthan military control. Identify yourself and state your intentions. Several seconds passed. Then a reply arrived.
The voice sounded calm,
Professional, completely unaffected by the massive fleet surrounding it. United Earth Warship Resolute. We received a distress call. Silence followed. The simplicity of the response confused everyone listening. The Dominion commander tried again. You are entering an active military operation. Withdraw immediately. The answer came without delay. Negative. Inside the Carthan flagship, disbelief spread through the command staff. No negotiation. No explanation. Just refusal. The Dominion admiral leaned forward. You are outnumbered. Another pause. Then the human voice returned. That information has been acknowledged. Nothing else. No concern. No defensive justification. The statement landed harder than any threat. On Verex Prime, morale began changing in ways Thalek hadn't witnessed since before the siege. Citizens flooded public communication networks. Soldiers listened to recordings of the exchange. Refugees who had spent months preparing for extinction suddenly found themselves discussing possibilities beyond survival. Not because victory seemed likely, because the humans sounded completely unafraid. Thalek requested direct communication with the Resolute. To his surprise, the channel opened immediately. The image that appeared showed a human officer standing on a bridge filled with personnel calmly performing their duties. No panic. No urgency. No visible concern regarding the enemy armada ahead. Thalek spoke first. You cannot win this battle alone. The human captain considered the statement, then nodded. Perhaps. The response caught him off guard. No boast. No dramatic declaration. Simply acceptance. Thalek frowned. Then why come? For the first time, a faint smile appeared on the captain's face. Because someone asked for help. The answer sounded so ordinary that it took several moments to appreciate its significance. The human captain continued. If civilizations only answered easy calls, most of the galaxy would already be gone. Around the Resolute, armored sections along the hull began moving. Massive plates shifted aside. Hidden structures emerged from beneath layers of protection. Weapon systems. Hundreds of them. Energy readings surged across every sensor network in the system. Observers watched in disbelief as power levels climbed higher and higher. The Dominion immediately ordered combat formations into attack positions. Missile batteries armed. Targeting solutions locked. Carrier groups launched strike craft. The blockade was preparing for war. Yet the Resolute maintained course. Its engines burned steadily. Its weapons continued charging. Its crew remained calm. Commander Thalek stared at the tactical display as probability forecasts updated in real time. The computer predicted defeat for the human vessel in every scenario. The machine could not calculate courage. It could not measure determination. And it certainly could not understand why a single warship had crossed unimaginable distances for strangers. Then a final transmission emerged from the Resolute and spread across every open frequency in the system. The captain's voice echoed through military channels, civilian networks, and enemy communications alike. Combat restrictions removed. All hands, commence rescue operations. At that exact moment, the human warship accelerated directly toward the heart of the blockade. The Carthan Dominion opened fire the instant the Resolute crossed the outer defensive perimeter. Hundreds of missiles surged forward. Energy lances flashed across the darkness. Entire squadrons of strike craft accelerated toward the lone human vessel from multiple directions. Against any conventional warship, the attack would have been overwhelming. The Resolute did not slow. Layers of defensive fields ignited around its hull. Incoming missiles vanished in bursts of light before reaching their target. Energy beams struck reinforced shielding only to disperse harmlessly across its surface. The human warship continued advancing directly into the center of the blockade. Then it returned fire. Massive weapon ports along the vessel's flanks unleashed concentrated streams of energy. The first barrage punched through an entire line of Carthan cruisers, forcing surviving ships to scatter. Moments later, long-range rail batteries fired. The projectiles crossed thousands of kilometers in seconds. Dominion formations that had held position for months suddenly broke apart. Commander Thalek watched the tactical display update so quickly that analysts struggled to keep pace. The human ship wasn't simply stronger. It was fighting differently. Every movement appeared calculated. Every attack served multiple objectives. Enemy sensor vessels were eliminated first. Communication relays followed. Command ships found themselves isolated from supporting fleets. Within minutes, the blockade's coordination began deteriorating. The Carthan admiral responded by deploying reserve forces. Fresh squadrons emerged from behind the primary battle line and converged on the Resolute from every direction. Numerical superiority, finally, began closing the distance. That was exactly what the humans seemed to want. Hidden launch bays opened across the warship's hull. Thousands of smaller craft erupted outward. Fighters, interceptors, attack drones, support vessels. They spread through the battlefield with astonishing precision. Each formation operated independently, while somehow remaining perfectly synchronized. Carthan pilots suddenly found themselves facing opponents capable of adapting to every tactic they attempted. Whenever the Dominion concentrated firepower in one area, human craft appeared elsewhere. Whenever commanders reinforced vulnerable positions, new weaknesses emerged behind them. The battlefield stopped behaving according to traditional doctrine. It became unpredictable. The Carthan admiral grew increasingly frustrated. His fleet still possessed overwhelming numbers. Yet every minute seemed to strengthen the humans while weakening his own forces. Losses mounted. Formation integrity deteriorated. Confidence vanished. Meanwhile, something remarkable happened on Varix Prime. For the first time since the siege began, orbital pressure around the planet began decreasing. Enemy ships assigned to maintain the blockade were abandoning their positions to join the battle. Supply corridors started opening. Communication interference weakened. The colony could breathe again. Not because the battle had been won, because one human warship had forced an entire invasion fleet to focus solely on it. Inside the Resolute, operations continued with remarkable calm. Damage reports arrived. Repairs were assigned. Weapons cycled through firing solutions. Crew members moved with practiced efficiency developed through years of experience. No celebrations. No panic. Just professionals doing their jobs. Then long-range sensors detected a new problem. Additional jump signatures appeared beyond the system's edge. At first, analysts hoped they belonged to friendly forces. The truth proved worse. Carthan reinforcements. Dozens of fresh warships emerged from hyperspace. Then dozens more. The Dominion had called for support from neighboring sectors. The tactical balance shifted immediately. Even observers inspired by the Resolute's performance struggled to remain optimistic. One warship against hundreds had seemed impossible. One warship against an expanding armada appeared suicidal. The Carthan admiral regained his confidence. Orders spread rapidly throughout the fleet. Encircle the human vessel. Overwhelm it through attrition. Crush resistance through sheer mass. For the first time, enemy formations began stabilizing. Commander Thalek stared at the growing concentration of hostile contacts. Hope threatened to collapse as quickly as it had appeared. Perhaps the humans had delayed defeat. Perhaps they had saved lives. But no civilization could withstand endless numbers forever. Then another anomaly appeared. A familiar distortion formed at the edge of the system. Sensor officers immediately recognized the pattern. Space itself twisted. Gravity fluctuated. Reality bent around an approaching force. Then a second distortion emerged. A third. A fourth. Soon dozens of them covered the outer reaches of the system. Silence spread through every command center. The Carthan fleet stopped advancing. Nobody needed confirmation. Everyone understood what they were seeing. The Resolute had never been alone. One by one, colossal human warships emerged from the void. Battleships, carriers, heavy cruisers, support vessels. An entire task force materialized around the system like a storm finally revealing its full size. A transmission immediately spread across open frequencies. The voice belonged to the captain of the Resolute. Calm as ever. Apologies for the delay. The rest of the fleet has arrived. Across Varix Prime, millions watched the tactical display transform. For the first time since the siege began, the Carthan Dominion no longer held numerical superiority. And for the first time since entering the system, humanity was finally fighting with its full strength. The arrival of the human task force shattered the final advantage the Carthan Dominion had relied upon throughout the siege. For months, their strategy had depended on overwhelming force. Every victory, every conquest, every successful campaign had been built upon the certainty that enough ships could solve any problem. That certainty disappeared within hours. Human vessels spread across the system with disciplined precision. Each ship immediately entered coordinated combat operations as though every movement had been planned long before arrival. Battle groups formed. Defensive corridors opened. Strike formations targeted critical Dominion assets. The Carthan fleet suddenly found itself fighting an enemy that anticipated every reaction. Attempts to regroup failed. Attempts to retreat failed. Attempts to establish new command networks failed. The battlefield no longer belonged to them. The final turning point arrived when human forces isolated the Dominion flagship from its escorts. For the first time since the invasion began, the Carthan admiral faced the possibility of defeat. His remaining ships fought desperately to reach him. None succeeded. Human cruisers blocked reinforcement routes while carrier wings dismantled incoming formations before they could close the distance. Surrounded and outmatched, the flagship transmitted surrender terms. The battle ended shortly afterward. Across Varix Prime, confirmation spread through civilian and military channels. The siege was over. No one celebrated immediately. The announcement felt unreal. Too many months had passed beneath fear and uncertainty. Too many losses had accumulated. Too many loved ones had been buried while waiting for help that never seemed destined to arrive. People simply stared at the reports. Then the reality settled in. The blockade was gone. The enemy fleet was defeated. They had survived. The reaction swept across the planet like a wave. Families embraced. Soldiers lowered weapons they had expected to carry until death. Emergency shelters erupted with tears, laughter, and disbelief. For the first time in months, citizens looked toward the future instead of the next day. Humanity, however, did not linger in celebration. The moment combat operations ended, relief efforts began. Cargo ships entered orbit carrying food supplies, medical equipment, water purification systems, power grid components, and industrial machinery. Engineering teams deployed across damaged population centers. Field hospitals appeared near the hardest-hit regions. Transport vessels evacuated the severely injured for advanced treatment. The speed of the response astonished local authorities. It was as if the humans had prepared for reconstruction before the battle had even started. Perhaps they had. Several days later, Commander Thalek finally met the captain of the Resolute in person. The veteran officer had rehearsed countless speeches during the meeting's approach. None seemed adequate. How did one thank those who had saved an entire world? In the end, he chose honesty. You crossed impossible distances for people you had never met. The human captain nodded. We did. Thalek looked toward the busy reconstruction efforts visible through the observation deck. Why? The answer came immediately. Because for the humans, the question apparently required no thought at all. Because the call reached us. Thalek waited for more. There was none. The simplicity forced him to ask again. That alone was enough? A faint smile appeared. Someone needed help. That usually is. For a moment, neither spoke. Then the captain continued. Strength has value only when it's used for something greater than itself. A fleet exists to protect people. Otherwise, it's just metal and weapons. The words spread farther than either intended. Military personnel repeated them. Journalists recorded them. Citizens shared them across communication networks throughout neighboring sectors. The story of Verex Prime traveled rapidly across known space. Not because humanity had won a battle. The galaxy had seen victories before. What captured attention was the reason humans had come. No treaties required intervention. No economic interests demanded involvement. No strategic benefit justified the risk. A distress signal had been received. Humanity answered. Months later, reconstruction continued successfully. Trade routes reopened. Cities expanded once again. New memorials honored those who had not lived to witness the liberation. Near one such memorial, a group of children watched the human task force preparing for departure. The massive ships slowly moved away from orbit, turning toward the endless darkness beyond explored space. One child stared at the departing fleet. Will they come back if we're ever in trouble again? An older survivor standing nearby smiled. He had witnessed the siege. He had witnessed the rescue. Most importantly, he had learned something about humanity. Yes, he said with complete certainty. They always come. As the fleet vanished into the void, a message remained behind, not written in words, but proven through action. Across the galaxy, one truth spread faster than any rumor, legend, or official report. If humanity heard your call, you were never truly alone.